Hello and welcome back to A Better World. This is your host, Mitchell Rabin, and I'm very glad you're joining us again today. Today we're going to have another very interesting show. We've actually invited back a wonderful scholar and author of, most lately, a book called Original Politics, Making America Sacred Again, Glenn Aparicio Parry. We had Glenn on a few years back to discuss his book then, Original Thinking, which is essentially an expression of the role of indigenous thought on our society, on our American culture, as well as an in-depth look at the wisdom and even you could call it academic intelligence of these people, the science, the art, the mathematics, that we generally do not even acknowledge or even believe is so. Glenn has helped to bring that forward, as he does essentially in this book as well, although this one is pointed a bit more specifically toward politics at a time when politics is so very important. The art of governance, you could say, is something that is on all of our minds because of, well, what we see as, I like to see it as essentially an aberration, but also a moment of reflection for us to see ourselves in a new light, in light of all that has been happening where our institutions, troubled as they may be, in need of help as they may be, still are being tumulted, are being catapulted into a whole other world. So it's really with great joy and honor that Glenn is joining me today to discuss this very subject and the deeper rhythm of bringing sacredness back to America and even all of its institutions and declarations made at the beginning as the word, as we've attempted to do, is made flesh. So, Glenn, welcome back to A Better World. A pleasure to have you back.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Good. Good. This is an enlivening book. It is a book very much of the moment, even though I feel it has resounding benefit over time. Tell me a little bit about first what inspired you to write it, and then let's get into the details of it.
Well, I pray to the ancestors a lot. And really, that's where I get my inspiration. And in this case, I am really, really grateful to the voices that came through, the ancestral knowledge. It's kind of overwhelming, Mitchell, because, nearly 4 years ago, Donald Trump hadn't even been elected yet. And I was shown this vision of, for this book called Original Politics, with 16 chapters laid out, and one of the chapters was, fascist America or sacred America. And in my, I started the book, and I tell the story in the preface about how I'm on the train, and that confirms my reasoning for wanting to do it.
Research you were conducting on
it was essentially a focus group handed to me by Amtrak because I was traveling alone to a conference in all the way in Illinois, and they when you're traveling alone, they put you with other people and you get a cross section of America.
For the meals and all,
yeah, for the meals,
and because
so but somehow, it crossed my mind that, oh my God, well, maybe this isn't going to be relevant anymore. Maybe Donald Trump is going to be, after he got elected, I said, maybe he's going to be impeached or removed. And are we really going to be on the precipice of a fascist nation by the time I finish writing this? Because the book needed time to marinate. It also needed time for events to unfold. But it only became increasingly relevant. It became, more and more obvious that the outline that was presented, through the ancestors,
more relevance than you even realized at the outset.
Oh yeah, I had no idea. So I mean, it's it's just, I'm grateful for it, and it worked out pretty well. And I hope that
Well,
and pray that the book is a book of healing for people.
indeed, indeed. It's really taken from that point of view. There are moments when one needs to be highly discerning and extremely critical of what it is we see, and we should not be back off of it. And it can be done in a nonpartisan way. One of the things that I very much am not in favor of these days, Glenn, and I'd love to hear what you have to say, is that when things are reduced to partisanship and to politics, so to speak, and I think it's a very unfair form of slander, honestly. I think people should be able to look at subjects, at issues at hand, at policies rather impartially, and that our partisan, our party relationships should always be subservient to the subjects at hand.
Yeah, well, that's certainly a better world, because
I like the resonance of that.
yes, and and
Yeah.
we always should begin from wisdom. Begin from wisdom. That's why
So well put.
in Native cultures, the wisdom council often was the women's council, and
Yeah.
if you begin there, you build a more coherent world.
Really true, really true. So you go into, and so many people don't even know that our founding fathers spent time in upstate New York, not far from the Canadian border, in the Iroquois Nation, learning Mohawk, by the way, and getting educated about the ways of wisdom of the native peoples of Turtle Island. Could you go into some depth about that,
Yeah.
so our larger audience can really understand the historical perspective and importance, influence of native peoples on our current society?
I will be happy to. And really, when people read my book, the most common feedback they'll give me is, I had no idea that Native America had such a strong and powerful influence. I thought that Native people were only warring with the colonists, and that was the only thing that happened. And, and it's often said, for instance, that the country was founded on genocide. People say that. And that's only a partial truth, because it was also founded on friendship. So if you dip back into the 17th century, you can realize that it really is 150 years since European settlers came here to stay. There's the Mayflower Pilgrims brought women and children, so they were intent on staying. There had been, exploratory groups before, and some of those actually did caused genocide through disease, so that's even when the Mayflower Pilgrims arrived in the area they arrived, the people had recently their population had been thinned from disease from previous explorers. But the Mayflower Pilgrims from 1620 for the next 54 years with the Wampanoag and the Narragansett have a peaceful relationship. Massaoit, whose real name is Osaquim, Massaoit just means sachem in his language, but that's what the colonists called him. He was a beloved figure, so they had a peaceful relationship. But they also teamed up against, so the Narragansett and the Wampanoag and the Plymouth colony teamed up against the Pequot. Since you're in New York City, you should know this. And they nearly vanquished the Pequot in 1636. But then later, that's why I found it a delicious bit of irony that in the 1990s, the Pequot opened essentially the world's largest casino 150 miles from New York City at the time that Donald Trump's casinos are faltering in Atlantic City. But to your question, to your point,
yes.
In the 17th century, you have some really peaceful figures. Roger Williams is one of them. And he's the progenitor of the concept of separation of church and state, later picked up by the founding fathers. Ben Franklin looks back to Roger Williams. Ben Franklin becomes the biggest, the most influential colonist to affect the course of history. And this happens because the mother country of Britain assigns Ben Franklin the task of being Indian ambassador to forge a military alliance with the Iroquois, or the Haudenosaunee. Haudenosaunee just means people of the Longhouse. The common name Iroquois was given by the French. So this is in the French and Indian Wars, and that they want Ben Franklin to forge a military alliance. And it makes sense because the Haudenosaunee, they had forged their own confederacy that kept the peace between the tribes, the Cayuga, the Oneida, the Seneca, the Mohawk, and the Onondaga. Later they add to Tuscarora. Way back in 1132, they make a peaceful pact, but they are a powerful military force that needs to be reckoned with, and they control the Hudson River. You're in New York, so I mean, when the Hudson River is later on, the Erie Canal connects to that, and the whole country is opened up. So this is a prime strategic place where good
real estate.
It's good real estate. It was good real estate even then, even without paying for it. So this changes the course of history because Ben Franklin forms an abiding friendship with Chief Conestoga, and it's Chief Conestoga himself who tells the colonists that they should unite. They should do like the Haudenosaunee did. You got to realize the Indians were a little irritated that the colonists were 13 separate governments, so it was pretty hard to deal with them too. They had 13 different leaders and stuff, so there was probably
currency, etc.
Yeah, so that's probably one of the reasons they wanted them to unite. But also they may have done it for the very good intention of truthfully sharing the wisdom of uniting. And Conestoga does this on July 4th, 1744, exactly 32 years before the Declaration of Independence. And he does it by using arrows. And he takes one arrow, he breaks it over his knee. Then he reaches behind him and grabs a sheaf of arrows, and he brings that over his knee. Of course, it doesn't break. And the meaning is plain to all. Ben Franklin never forgets this. And many years later, he's on the committee designing the Great Seal of the United States, and he puts the bundled arrows in the left talon of the eagle. That's just one thing. The eagle itself is on the top, the great tree of peace for the Haudenosaunee. So the eagle is a symbol coming from Native America.
Front of your book, which is
we have the eagle on the front of the book. Here's the book. Yeah, because the eagle is a sacred symbol of America, but it's also a symbol for the Haudenosaunee. And by the way, I have the snake, or the Ouroboros, the snake eating its own tail on the front of the book, and a white buffalo. And the snake eating its own tail is a symbol of the feminine wholeness, the womb.
The origin.
Origin, yeah. And
like the foundational archetype of creation.
But do you know why I also put it on there? Because Mahatma Gandhi said something once, where he said that, because Mahatma Gandhi was a political, both a spiritual figure and a political figure. And he said that, he couldn't ignore politics because politics was like a snake that encircled everything. And so I choose to wrestle with the snake, is what Gandhi said. So yeah, that was another reason I wanted to put it on. And then the white buffalo is on there because the white buffalo is a symbol of, a symbol of peace and rebirth and a harbinger of peace, I should say. And hopefully that is a true symbol because we have had buffalo calves built. But anyway, back to the story.
Of the influence of the Iroquois nation on American original thinking and texts.
Yeah, on text, because it's very important. There's so much more. It's not just that Chief Conestoga implants the idea of uniting. The Great Law of Peace, which was written on wampum bells, that was both currency and a way of communicating story. Ben Franklin learns about this. And he is the principal writer of the founding document of the United States, which is not the Constitution. It's the Articles of Confederation. The very name should give us a clue.
Yes.
It's related to the Iroquois Confederacy. It's Articles of Confederation. It's about the states uniting as a confederacy.
Hello, everyone. Do you get it?
Yeah. So, and in the Iroquois Confederacy, they have a Grand Council that's, I think, 50 people, and Ben Franklin makes a Grand Council, same name, 48 people. Here's a fact that people don't, often realize. Under the Articles of Confederation, all the political figures serve for free. They just serve for public service. This is the same way it was in Native America and still is generally today. So when you're appointed for a role, you do it out of public service. Ben Franklin very much supported that and argued for it in the Constitutional Convention. But by then he was in his 80s, he was old, he had kidney stones and gout. And, people don't realize, you watch, Hamilton was like 28 years old and Madison was 32. So they probably saw a career in politics. They didn't accept the idea of people working for free, although they did want to put a check on emoluments. You weren't supposed to take gifts of any kind. But under the Articles of Confederation,
how that has gotten forgotten, Glenn.
Yeah, it's kind of sad, but a lot of it hasn't been forgotten. There's a lot of things that stuck from Native America. So maybe I should focus on
and there's an entire the fundamental virtues of patience and generosity and liberty and justice.
Yes.
Equality between genders as well.
Yes.
These are also things that emerged from the Longhouse. This was understood. Absolutely. And I would love if you could, show how did that influence the original thinking and then actually become textualized?
It influenced a lot of it. Because, the founding fathers noticed that the native societies had no prisons, had no judges, had no courts. They didn't have the trappings of European governments.
Yes.
But they did have, can we press pause for a second?
Oh, sure.
Yeah. My dog is barking away and bothering me. All right, I'm getting it. Hold on. Okay. Yeah. There's only one in existence, but this is the.
I love it.
This is, and then you're just. This is. So it represents the 5 colors of humanity. So the black bill, the red is for Native America. Sure. But of course, I brought this to focus groups, and of course they think of Trump's hat first, but then they're transformed. They say, what is it? It must be something different. And then, the yellow, the brown, and on the back it says original politics, and inside it's got the website. And here's the funniest thing too. Also, masa, the initials, M-A-S-A, make the Spanish word, which means cornmeal. So what do you use for a sacred offering? Cornmeal.
Exactly.
So it's all about making America sacred again. And the very meaning of the word sacred, I can't wear this with the headphones. That's the only problem. The very meaning of the word.
An impression. Let me put it.
Yeah, okay. The very meaning of the word sacred comes from the Latin sacare, which means to devote or dedicate. So when you make something sacred, you're invoking the whole. So that's why I wanted to make the 5 colors. It
comes even older from the Indo-European, connected to the word whole and holy.
Yes.
One of the definitions is sacred, to make sacred.
Yes, I agree.
It actually goes back to the word kailos, which is really even related to the word health.
Yes. Yes.
Health as being whole. Yeah. In
And
any event, it's so valuable. I was going to share a little anecdotal story with you about,
sure.
since you mentioned what you did about Clinton, which I had no idea he did that with the purchase of those 535 books. Well, I did not vote for Clinton, although this isn't a place for discussing such things. But when he got elected, I thought, look, the guy at least, smokes a little pot, and even though he lies about it, and plays jazz saxophone, he's got something, on the ball. As an old lover of saxophone, jazz, and a hippie, like we discussed the other day, I had a little affection for him. I wrote him a letter, and this was the beginning of this show, A Better World, in 1993. My first show was actually my reading the letter that I wrote to Clinton, saying that I thought that if he wanted to be the leader of the free world, as we use that phrase, that he needed to make reparations to the peoples that have been profoundly hurt and harmed on this land. And the first people to be apologized to most humbly was, of course, the native peoples of Turtle Island. Then, of course, the Blacks. Then, of course, the Latinos. And then, of course, the Chinese. And then, of course, the Japanese. That each of these groups, and no doubt more, but these are the primary groups that have been here either before us or after the Anglo, and were oppressed, suppressed, repressed, and endangered. And that if he were to do that in true honesty, that the blessings will come back to this country. And then I asked him also to form a cabinet level position of elders from different native nations, and that would complete the full circle of honoring the original people and their intelligence and culture and wisdom to be informing future choices of this nation. That's the letter that I wrote to Bill Clinton.
It's a beautiful letter. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
I
you.
thought you,
Did
of
you
all people,
did you receive a
would have
reply?
said it. I actually did.
Okay.
I actually did. It was a format reply in a card, but it was a reply. And later I heard, and maybe you would know more about this than I would, that he actually did offer an apology to Native people. I don't know how publicized it was or not, but that's what I had heard. And I don't,
Yeah.
I'm just happy.
Yeah. I want to encourage your listeners and viewers to look up on the web Declaration of Commitment to Indigenous Peoples. While I was the executive director of the Seed Institute, we held a conference in 2012 called Wisdom from the Origins, the Mayan Prophecy and Other Prophecies on the Future of Humanity.
Yes.
And in that, we commissioned, this was in partnership with the Shift Institute, and James O'D was the principal writer, and I know you know James well.
I do.
And so that's why I'm telling you this story, because it came to mind, I think, because I'm talking with you, Mitchell. So it's
I know Steve Dinan as well, and Phil Helmut, and others.
Yeah, absolutely. And we were collaborating that year, and it was, I think, the initial year of the Summer of Peace initiative as well. And the idea came for writing this Declaration of Commitment to Indigenous Peoples. But the important thing is that it goes beyond it went beyond apology. So it was about apology, truth and reconciliation, collaboration. There was a fourth element. I'm living it now. It's very important, a very beautiful document. And we had Native people that surrounded the stage. If you see the video, it's still online. They made a circle surrounding the stage. There were quite a lot of Native people at this conference, so about 50 or more circled the stage, and we had 500 total people in the audience. And then we presented it to the International Council of 13 Indigenous Grandmothers, at least the 6 or 7 representatives we had from that council, sure, as a gift. And then people cheered and cheered wildly, and then out of the wild cheering of 500 people, this single voice comes out, and this is Maori elder Rangamiri Rose Pere. And if you know the Maori, they're booming loud. It's just, big. So out of that, you can hear her. And now people. The video only at the very last second gets a glimpse of her, because the videographer, who was Joyce Anastasia, who's a friend, and she just got there at the end, as it was, she was moving to try to get in position to find where is that voice coming from. Right. So it's just, I think that's what we have to do. And I also want to I want to tie this into something that I wrote about in my book that your readers will get a chuckle out of too. Mm-hmm. I personally think that Barack Obama is the reincarnation of Abraham Lincoln. Now, I did not specifically say that in the book. I just said he might as well be the reincarnation. But they're actually both tall. They're both tall and thin with big ears. They both have a mole on one side of the face. They both came from Illinois. But they weren't born in Illinois, but they were not born in Illinois, but they both came to Illinois. They became a congressman for a short time, right. And they both, with enormously large odds against them, became president of the United States during terribly divisive times. One, of course, quickly becomes the Civil War. But in the Civil War, Abraham Lincoln frees the slaves with the Emancipation Proclamation, and Barack Obama becomes the first African-American president. I truly believe he may be the reincarnation of Abraham Lincoln. He even took the interesting idea. He took the oath of office with Abraham Lincoln's Bible. He admired Lincoln. He had the same kind of character. Yes. They were both very good storytellers, and they were also humor. Yeah, they have a good sense of humor. Dry. Yeah. But very interesting. And they're both kind of, they're not natural extroverts, either one. No. They're more introverted, and yet they do know how to campaign and make speeches. Certainly better basketball than the other one. One's probably but can I complete one thought there though? But there's the important point is that Barack Obama completes unfinished business of Lincoln. Because Lincoln is a great president for African Americans. He frees the slaves, but nothing changed vis-a-vis Native America. The Indian Wars that were kicked into full gear in the 19th century under Andrew Jackson, and arguably began 2 centuries earlier, but in the 19th century, full-on genocide occurs. Under Jackson, he rounded up the Creek, the Seminole, the Choctaw, the Chickasaw, and the Cherokee, the last being the Trail of Tears. And he just was the worst president you could possibly imagine for Native America. But under Lincoln, you still had the Navajo Long Walk and the Sand Creek Massacre. And the Sand Creek Massacre is really interesting because that moves out the Cheyenne and the Arapaho from the area of Colorado that became known as Littleton, Colorado. And I really feel in my heart that that is the reason why the first mass shooting occurs at Columbine, because the land had not yet been healed. We need to heal the land. Oh, yes. So anyway, that's why Lincoln, I think. Why you're saying this. Yeah, Obama is really, I believe, he did the unfinished work because Obama did support Native America profoundly. He is the most beloved president ever that the United States has ever had in Native America. He gave billions of dollars of reparations back to Native tribes. He reconciled a lot of the treaties, and God knows there's so many. Every single treaty that's ever been written has been violated, and all those treaties, if you've ever listened to Oren Lyons, they're all written to be valid as long as the sun rises in the east, the rivers run downhill, and the grass grows green. Of course, that's still happening. So they shouldn't be out of force.
Oren Lyons has been on this show.
Oh, beautiful.
As Jake Swamp. So I've been very aligned with the Mohawk Nation over the course of decades. So I appreciate what you're saying. Thank you for all of this. This is wonderful. I'd like to come full circle now and take a look at one of the other themes that you bring up in the book, which I think is very important for Americans to think about, because we are living on this precipice this very moment, which is that of democracy or fascism. And it's a word we don't like to use for lots of reasons, and that includes me. I don't like the word at all, and both of us actually have Jewish ancestry, and making it even more painful to use the word, and the entire cultural context that it includes, and the shift of mind that happened in Germany that allowed the ascension of Hitler, and what we're seeing here by a bombastic, illiterate person who has no understanding of government, no understanding of institutions, no understandings of political negotiation, but simply just bullying his way, like I say, a bull in a china shop, just forcing his way and foisting his way and complimenting, you know, the greatest dictators on the planet and alienating the greatest leaders of democratic nations, on and on and on and on. So it's a fool's errand this country has gone on, yet, as with everything else, there's always a silver lining.
Yes.
So I would like you to, if you would, just take a few minutes, Glenn, and expand on what you think about this precipice on which we sit, and what we need to learn about this moment so we can make intelligent, informed, and wise decisions from here on out. We don't have a lot of time left, but please.
Well, in 45 seconds, I can tell you a story that I told in the book, the White Mountain Apache story. And I think it's the critical story of the book. So it goes like this. There's an old woman who's weaving a beautiful rug. And as she nears completion of the rug, she gets up to stir a soup that's on the fire. But when she gets up, her black dog, who's been sleeping in the corner, awakens and pulls on a thread with its mouth and unravels the whole rug. The woman comes back and she's unfazed, and she doesn't get mad at the dog, but she just stares into the rug for a long time. She sees there where there was beauty and harmony, there's now chaos and disorder. But she keeps on staring until she reimagines an even more beautiful way to reweave the rug in beauty and harmony. That's where I think we are in America today. I mean, Donald Trump is the black dog, obviously, if I have to make that obvious. He's unraveled the rug.
Yes.
And to some extent, he's unraveled the rug of the world order. Now, some of that world order was insidious and not necessarily a good thing. So,
that's right.
So this is an opportunity to see the world and see the United States as it really is. It's also been very dangerous because he's given license to forces to come out that were in the shadows. And yeah, we both have Jewish heritage. I mean, I was shocked, and I shouldn't have been shocked, when at Charlottesville people were chanting, "Jews will not replace us." I shouldn't have been shocked because the KKK had merged, you know, anti-black sentiment with anti-Jewish sentiment in the 1920s. It was always there, but it was buried. It was buried. We didn't see it out in the open. Now it's out in the open. You know, Donald Trump was using the same tactics that David Duke and the KKK have done in the modern era. They use dog whistles. They don't say overtly racist things because the dog whistles are heard by those that want to hear it. But there is a great opportunity here. And at the same time, there's great danger. We are on the precipice of fascism. Fascism doesn't come about because of constitutions. There's a very good book, which you're probably, I think you know, how it's on my bookshelf, How Democracies Die, Stephen Levitsky and Daniel Ziblatt. They talk about the, in 1853, Argentina copied 2/3 of the United States Constitution. But they still ended up with Perón. They still ended up with autocracies. It's not about the Constitution. It's not about checks and balances. There are checks and balances that have been written in, but if you just, bulldoze past those, if you just challenge, if you just break the law and say, stop me, then it becomes very difficult. So we're on this precipice, but I am hopeful that because things have come out in the open, that we can have a healing and we can move on. But I'll tell you this, though, we have to make some changes, because now that the way has been shown for how to just run roughshod over the norms of society, norms that were given by Native America. It's Native Americans who gave the very idea of not interrupting in Congress, of talking respectfully to other members. Think about it. That's why in England they jump and dance and scream and yell on the British House of Commons. Why isn't it that way in America? It's because 21 Iroquois braves came to the Continental Congress and they insisted upon having no interruption. That sacred practice of dialogue, talking circle, is what we need. Now, give some credit to Susan Collins. You remember Susan Collins? She actually brought a talking stick. Here's my talking stick. She brought a talking staff to her offices during the government shutdown, and she conducted a dialogue. But here's the funny thing about it. Even though they were respectful to each other on the halls of Congress, in her offices, one senator didn't quite understand the concept, so he interrupted another senator, causing the first senator to forcefully throw the talking staff at the first senator, at the interrupting senator, and it goes right past him and breaks a glass elephant that's on Susan Collins' shelves. And look at it, think about it. The elephant is a symbol of the Republican Party. So, but that was a bipartisan meeting. There was a bipartisan meeting, and it's still, Susan Collins had a good sense of humor. She switches to a rubber ball. They continue on, and they actually broke the lock, the lock jam. They found a solution, and the government shutdown ended. That was in 2018, as you might recall.
So
yeah, that's what we need to bring. But we need to bring not just civility, but respect.
Truly.
And we need, ultimately I end the book with love, but Mitchell, we can't get to love before we have respect. And that's why Corey...
Some say that the best expression of love is respect.
Thank you. That's a brilliant, that's right.
Really willing to be behind that.
That's what they say in Native America. That's what Colombian Mamos say generally, because it's respecting the right of everything to exist, including viruses, by the way, is how you come back into balance. Everything has a right to exist. And even a virus would not be virulent if it were in animal populations where it came from, and it would be neutral then. So it's the way of rebalancing. We've been out of balance, and this is our opportunity to rebalance.
Well put. I am going to ask you one final question.
Sure.
Final, for now, that is, provisionally. Of all of your research into Native peoples and the history and the influence on the Western mindset, the European become American, and all that you have witnessed over these past many years, including the last 4, what do you want our audience to walk away from, thinking about, and remembering from this interview?
Wow. Well, first of all, I want to say that I don't want to position myself as an expert on Native America, because I follow my mentor in Native America, Dan Moonhawk Alford, who told a story about when he was a child going to his father's place of work, and his father was a longshoresman, so working on the northern coast of California, and he spent the morning stacking up logs on a jitney, and then they took lunch overlooking the Pacific Ocean. And it's the first time Moonhawk's ever seen the ocean. And he says, "Dad, that sure is a lot of water out there." And his father says, "Yep, and that's just the top of it." So Moonhawk used to tell that story because, and I feel the same way. So, and one, especially, I'm Basque, Otagon, Spanish, Jewish. Basque is, European indigenous, but I don't want to position myself as any kind of expert. But if there's one thing I can I can suggest to your viewers and listeners, it would be that let's not just return to normal. Let's return to natural. Let's try to find the rhythm within ourselves. We have a word for it. It's very rarely used, circadian rhythms, but our body can beat at the same heartbeat of nature. We can move at the same pace. And if we do that, we'll feel happier, we'll feel more satisfied, and we'll get more done without rushing.
Oh, that is such a beautiful tone to end on. I am a true believer in what you're saying. I'm fundamentally a Taoist, which is essentially a way of saying a Chinese-style naturalist. So I'm Taoish, you could say.
That's hilarious. Not a Jubu, you're a Taoish.
That's right.
Okay.
And, there is actually a wonderful field that has emerged in the United States called biomimicry. And it's the beautiful understanding, articulation of what it is you were just saying about what we can do of emulating nature. And, or laughing about the Taoist, but that in fact is what they were doing. They were imitating nature in bodily movement and Qigong and Tai Chi Chuan and meditating, etc. Was just seeing nature and saying, I am part of that. And I'm going to embody that energy, rhythm, and pattern and cycle.
Yeah.
So, words are wise. And
that's where it's at.
I so appreciate it.
No, thank you. I so appreciate you, and thank you very much for your vision of making a better world and for the people that you interview. We're just happy to be a part of the show.
Thank you, Glenn Aparicio.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate it. And keep up the good work.
Thank you.
We'll have you on another time.
Okay. Many blessings.
Thank you. Bye-bye now. This is Mitchell J. Rabin for A Better World. I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. A real learning experience. And it's really so valuable to embrace all of our history and understand the interstitial stitchings, if you will, of one people to another. It's not linear at all. What you can see from what Glenn was sharing with us is it's truly circular. It's systemic. And this is the way we want to understand our entire history. It's the history of a species. We think of it as individuals, as minorities, ethnicities. Well, there is a level of truth to that, but it's only a partial level. It's a relative level. The real story is the story of the species on the earth and how do we behave. What neuroscience tells us these days is that when we get along with each other, when we cooperate, when we make each other laugh, quite honestly, through sharing, through loving, through dancing, through storytelling, This is what binds us, and this is what keeps us together as a system, as part of a larger ecosystem. So what I hear in Glenn's words and work is a call to that level of understanding. So it's with that I want to leave you to think about, reflect on, and consider as you move on through our next steps in this experiment called democracy. Mitchell J. Rabin, I appreciate your comments and feedback. I look forward to seeing you all next week.
Thank you so much.